2/3 of consumers think tipping has become less voluntary. The Competition and Consumer Protection Commission has issued guidance on the use of tipping machines in cafes, bars and restaurants. As research shows, a fifth of people have also paid an unexpected service charge. The guidance includes making sure payment terminals let customers easily avoid gratuity. The body says mandatory service charges need to be properly advertised and voluntary ones should never go on the bill automatically. Adrian Cummins, he's the Chief Executive of the Restaurants Association of Ireland. He says most members are in compliance with CCPC guidelines.
The vast majority of consumers will be asked if they would like to provide a tip, and then if there's a prompt message to say what percentage you would like or if you don't like. So that is within the regulations and within the legislation. The clarity around service charge and gratuity is very clear from the CCPC what consumers should see.
Joining me for more on this, indeed a local perspective, Andrew Flood from Clonlara, who's running on Beag Café on Henry Street in Kilrush, and from the Homestead Cottage in Doolin, Robbie, McCauley. And lads, thanks very much for being with me on Thursday's Morning Focus. Andrew, that CCPC research showing 2/3 of people feel tipping in Ireland has become less voluntary, which I guess feeds into the way we tip is clearly changing. Tipping has always been part of hospitality, but it looks like it is changing. How big a shift have you noticed in that regard in recent years?
Hi, Alan. Thanks for having us on. I think you mentioned the 2 out of 3 think tipping is becoming less voluntary. I think there's also another stat in there saying 3 out of 4 would like businesses to make it easier to opt out. So I think the main thing is clarity for the customer and making it avoidable. I have to say I agree with all the guidelines the CCPC have released on this. I think it's important that it is highlighted. Also from the employee perspective, that tips are fairly taken and distributed. There was an RAI survey from 2024, and there was all respondents that tips do contribute to staff morale. They contribute to service quality, to staff retention. So it's a critical, albeit voluntary and supplementary aspect to a functioning hospitality sector.
And can I ask you, Andrew, how you approach it in on Beag Café?
Yeah, so we actually use just a cash jar. We feel that it gives maximum discretion for the customer. It keeps it voluntary. I think the whole thing of the tip terminals is maybe more of an urban-centric issue, kind of a cashless city issue. In West Clare here, cash is definitely still king. So, I think in a world as well where we're losing human connections day by day, I think a tip is a small price to pay to stave off, the bots and the self-dispensing coffee kiosks.
That's
for us as well. I don't know, it might be different for Robbie, but in Homestead, but we get a lot of repeat custom. If someone comes in one week and they don't have cash, chances are they'll be in the next. And our transaction amounts are lower as well, so we're talking 5, 10, 20, and the loose change might then go into the Busca Tavini.
Yeah, that is an interesting point on the cash is king, Robbie, that Andrew is making. Is that? Do you agree with that? Because he's in Kilrush, you're in Doolin, and maybe in less urban areas, that's the approach to take. And having the tip jar, I suppose it puts the power in the hands of the customer. If they, tips are nice, but we've a very different approach here in Europe to America. Where you feel like you want to have the power to say, well, I enjoyed that service. They were very nice. I'll tip them, and it's a more, I suppose, anonymous way to do it in a sense. If you can put it into a tip jar, is that how you do things in Homestead Cottage?
Hi, Al. Thanks for having us on. You mentioned America and the tipping service over there. Anyone who's been to America now in the last couple of years has seen tipping over there going to extremes. Places starting out at 20% tips and going up to 30, even 35%, which is huge, and that's not what I don't think anyone is expecting to be tipping, and that's never, I'd hope, going to be the case over here. But I think we probably about 95, 98% of our transactions are done through card. So it's quite different, you know, where obviously a restaurant, like a destination restaurant, that's people are making reservations for, you know, weeks, months in advance, and we have a lot of international guests from the US, the UK, and all over Europe, as well as, you know, luckily a great Irish customer base. But I mean, look, I think the whole thing with tipping and stuff, I understand where a lot of people are saying it's becoming expected, and I think, like, I'm sure most people will know that Irish people are actually some of the best people to tip.
Are they? Because I was going to ask you about that. Your international customers and your Irish customers, whether you notice a trend of maybe the Americans are more likely to tip because it's just second nature to them, and maybe other visitors less so.
Well, like, look, I mean, I think, you know, I know it was during COVID and stuff, but geez, like the amount people were getting in tips was huge, and, you know, and that was, you know, 95% Irish customers who were spending then. I mean, a lot of the American base actually, the funny thing is, when they go to restaurants, don't tip unless it is a service charge, or it's on the bill, because in America it's so used to, and a lot of people have this thought process, like the thought in America that in Europe they don't tip. You know, I remember hearing someone saying that, and I was kind of taken aback by it, because, you know, you would be quite surprised. I remember the first year we opened, we found, the Americans could be very slow to tip in comparison to a lot of the other Europeans and Irish customers.
Okay, again, that's it. Go ahead
as well. Like, you know, like every time, you know, hospitality is mentioned, I think, just to put it like in perspective as well, every time hospitality is mentioned, you know, it's always mentioned about low-paying jobs and all this, like, and everyone has seen a huge, you know, price increase on everything, you know, and you know, as hospitality sector, we've seen it like across the board. You know, it's always in the news about, you know, rising cost of food, like food costs, staff costs, insurance costs, utility costs. You know, you add all that, we cannot add that same like level of increases onto customers, you know, because customers just simply won't go out. You know, they won't go for a cup of coffee, they won't go for out for a meal, they won't even go out for a special occasion. And, you know, because with the cost of living crisis, you know, people are seeing less and less people coming out. So, like, I totally understand it, you know, but at the same time, the employer has to find a way to try to give more to the employee, you know, because at the end of the day, they are also facing the same increase in costs. And that's one thing where it's like, you know, tipping, especially for, you know, both in West Clare and North Clare where we are, you know, in Doolin, we are very tourist driven. You know, it's great when we have that kind of shortage season.
Yeah,
to be able to.
And can I ask you about that, Andrew? You know, to tourists coming to Kilrush and visiting on Beag Café, do you notice a trend in that regard? Are Americans more likely to tip, or as Robbie has just touched on, unless it's included in the bill, or unless it's on the card machine, the option to do it, that you have your tip jar, they're less likely to put money into that, or they've heard, oh well, in Europe they don't have a tipping culture, so they just go when in Rome, do as.
Yeah, I think Robbie's kind of spot on there. Like, even though they're world renowned for their own tipping culture in their own country, I think when they leave, they don't adopt the same approach. I think that's because a lot, like, if you just Google it, like, look at all the forums are full of, you know, Americans asking, oh, what do I do when I'm in Europe? And, you know, they're all saying to each other, oh, they don't tip over there like we do, so don't worry about it.
Maybe they're relieved a bit as well, because they're broke from tipping for absolutely everything you need to do in America.
I think so. Their wallets are getting a holiday as well as themselves, yeah. But, you know, I think also what Robbie said, you know, we're blue in the face. You know, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that margins are low in this industry, and, you know, talented, hard-working staff can't always be paid a wage that they may be truly deserving of, you know, and this is where the tip can make the difference for them, you know. Like, a good day's tips could pay for your bus fare for the week, which, you know, is huge, because, you know, in other industries, you know, people get commission, people get bonuses, perks, you know, it's the hospitality industry's version of that, I suppose. But ultimately, I think we want to try and keep this positive. We want to encourage people out into our businesses, encourage the best out of our staff. And, you know, I feel the most important thing is building a strong service culture in this country, and teamwork, and to make reward-worthy experiences. So, you know, adopting the old, like, take your points and your goals will come kind of motto, you know.
I'm just wondering, Robbie, to come back to you with the card machines. If someone is paying by card, the CCPC says tipping screens should default to a clear no tip option. And when I have been out, even quite recently this week, the server comes over with the card machine, and there is the option to not tip. But over half of people in the survey saying they sometimes feel pressure to tip, even when they'd rather not. Is there still that that sense of it is an awkward situation that the server's holding the card machine, and even if they're not, they're standing beside you. I mean, they can clearly see whether you've selected 10, 15, 20% or whether you've selected no tip at all, and whether if you select that, you're being judged because of it.
No, I think do you know something. I think it's one of those things though. It's like the vast amount of people, if something isn't right, they'll still say, oh yeah, it's perfect. I think I actually think if someone's refusing to tip, sometimes it's actually you have to look at, okay, where did we falter there, and look, it's a good tool as well in that way. People shouldn't expect to. I do think it's like people shouldn't expect to have to tip if service isn't good, or if something and that's something which people really should be kind of strict about, because that's where you kind of fall into the model of America, where it's expected to tip, and some places you will go and there'll be fantastic service and stuff, and and it is that extra kind of that little add-on of saying it's perfect, but you shouldn't be if you don't get good service, you should be you should be able to put that you're not happy with it, because end of the day, it's like Andrew said, it's like commission, everyone's working hard and stuff, and people who do a good job, if they get an extra a bit of a tip or whatnot, that's great, but it shouldn't just be driven that poor service still gets that tip. I think that's and also I think look, as a whole society, we kind of need to look at hospitality and the service sector a bit different, in the sense of looking at it as a career path and not just as something that people do going through college or whatnot. We have we're slightly different, I know, from a lot of places, but in the sense that we have a sommelier, they have 15 years training done. A restaurant manager who's worked in the industry for nearly 20 years.
Yeah, they've invested in a career.
Exactly, it's very much a career, and to be honest, on our end, when it comes to Michelin star restaurants, if you go to a lot of Michelin star restaurants, across Europe or in America, the prices they charge are astronomical in comparison to over in this country. And I'm not saying that we should, but that's where sometimes we kind of forget, for the quality of food that we have in this country, and the quality of produce that we have. We aren't being massively overcharged. Don't get me wrong, I know it's expensive to go out to eat and stuff, but if you're going out for something special, in a lot of countries you pay 3-4 times what we pay.
Okay, so I appreciate what we have here by comparison. I just want to bring both of you, and indeed our listeners, some of the views and the range of views that are coming in on this from the Morning Focus listeners. Teresa says, good morning. I always tip. I worked in hospitality for 20 years and was always delighted to receive a tip, no matter how much. Small or large makes no difference. When diners left a tip, I always felt appreciated. I tip bus drivers, bin men, postmen and women, and anybody that supplies a business service at Christmas, just a token of appreciation. It doesn't have to be huge, just a little token. It means a lot, I believe. But another listener taking a different tack in this, they say tipping culture, it's just encouraging stupid people. My daughter-in-law in the USA has a degree in maths, became a teacher and worked in a bank for very short periods, but went back to serving tables as she made more money walking back and forth to the kitchen. But look, we've touched on the culture over there, and I guess the main beneficiaries are those service people like your daughter-in-law who can make a lot of money from tips, but also the business owners who it's allowing them to pay their employees a small wage. Come in, Robbie.
Sorry, just to come in there. I think there's my point about what some people. I'm very passionate about the hospitality industry, and I'll speak up all about it. But to say that it's making people stupid and stuff,
that's extreme.
Fantastic people. I know, but there's fantastic people working up and down this country in the hospitality industry who are incredibly bright and stuff. And I really, really don't like when people are it's kind of the dunces and stuff. Yeah. It's definitely not.
No, it's a cynical view of it. Yeah, Andrew?
I'd have to agree with that. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a low blow there. I would wonder, because there was another thing that came out in this CCPC review an interesting stat that it was women who were the more generous of the sexes. So I wonder what that second texter there I know Teresa. We had Teresa first. I wonder what the second person was.
Yeah, and exactly. And I mean, it seems like a sensible decision to go with the job that will pay you more money, to be perfectly honest, regardless of what the job is.
What you're most passionate about, you know? End of the day, we talk about mental health, and I think that's one of the biggest things, you know, do a job that you're passionate about and you're interested in.
Very true. Lastly, gents, if maybe either of you have a view on this or can answer it, Pat is asking, I heard when you tip with your card, a tax has to be paid on that tip. Can you check this? I don't know. Yeah.
So
on average,
all tips. Sorry, go ahead, Robbie.
Sorry, card tips on average is anything up to 15%, between 10% PRSI, 2% bank service card charges, 2% admin, like, you know, payroll system charges. So so for every €10 you're leaving, the restaurant serving staff, kitchen staff, they're only getting €8.50 of that.
Okay, well, thanks. It's good to get clarity on that, and indeed, thank you to both of you for joining us on.
Can I just say, Alan,
very quickly, Andrew?
To anyone, whether you're a tipper or not, you're very welcome down here to Kilrush, beautiful corner of the county.
Fair play. Go on, Robbie, go on. Very good. Two brilliant establishments, two brilliant guests as well. Andrew Flood running on Beag Café in Henry Street in Kilrush, and Robbie McCauley from Homestead Cottage in Doolin.